on for its computer right now.
The board workshop of March 31st is now, and I will turn it over to Mr.
Thank you.
Superintendent
Thank you,
Van
Chair
Eers.
Perez and board members. This is the first of our two-part workshop this morning and into the afternoon, so we're going to start with policies. This is part of our policy cycle, which we have a workshop, and I think there are 5 proposed policies that we'll look at today, and I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Porteous to kind of go over with the board members the proposed policies and today's first part.
Thank you, Superintendent. Board members, there are, as the Superintendent said, 5 policies, 4 are board initiated that I will introduce, and then the last one is a staff proposed policy which Mr. Davis will introduce. So we'll jump into them. The first one is a revision of policy 0160 regarding meetings. This was brought forward by member Rendon. And what this policy does is really codify what we're already doing at board meetings about public participation. If you turn to page 3 of 4, beginning on line 147, you see the red line version. And this is just a reflection of what is currently happening at board meetings. And Ms. Rendon, if you want to speak further about the reasoning for that.
Thank you so much. Based upon certain lawsuits that were filed in Brevard County as well as Alachua, Orange at different times, each time the references in any of the cases reference policy. And this was not included in our policy, but we read it out loud at a board meeting. So I want to make sure that what we say at a board meeting, we actually have in policy. So if what's ever referred to, we just know we're following exactly what we say we're going to say.
They're calling her. Oh, I guess I'm going to be the name caller.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, and I have something to comment too. Lynn, or Member Gray?
Well, that was good service. Yeah, I want to thank everybody in this room for putting all these policies together. Thank you, Mr. Porter. And Ms. Rendon also, I appreciate this because, you know, we've always had a variation of how many minutes the public can speak. Oh, it's too long, the same people speak. You know, we've had those kinds of conversations in the past, and I was just wondering, and this is regarding line 152, where we have 3 minutes for a certain amount. I just wonder if we would be open to think about just a blanket 2-minute for everyone, because what happens is, am I 3 minutes? Do I have 2 minutes? Do I have 1 minute? And that would eradicate and eliminate that type of situation that happens. And member in, oops, I'm sorry.
2 minutes.
Oh, is that my 2 minutes?
2 minutes, Ralph.
Got change.
All right, there comes the hook. All right. Okay, that's one consideration, and I look forward to the board comments. The second one is a edit, and then I'll be done. On line 157, where it says, "No board member will interrupt a speaker. However, the board will not allow," and I just wonder, and with due respect to Chair Perez and future chairs, if it would be better to put, "However, the chair will not allow any behavior." Because in the final analysis, I'm not going to pound, right, because I'm not a chair, and Vaughn's not going to pound, and I know Superintendent Van Ayers won't. So what do you think about that? And I'll just leave that as an open question to the board.
Okay, and
That's it.
Member Rendon, you can go back and look at these comments afterwards, so that way, unless, you know,
No,
that,
I-
okay, go
you know,
ahead now then, okay, go ahead.
Okay, so this is what we as a board already discussed in and when we had a retreat 2 years ago, and we created this procedure that we're using at our board meetings. And so I just took what we as a board had already approved in that retreat and put it in policy. I didn't change any of the wording. I didn't do anything differently, but we had already discussed whether it was 3 minutes or 2 minutes or how we did it. And we made a discussion, since our district was so large, that we gave an opportunity for 3 minutes for people that would come, because some people come an hour and a half just to speak. And that way we did it. And then if we went too long, after 30 people, that was, so I didn't make any changes to what the board had decided throughout at the retreat. And so I just want to make sure it was codified in policy, not just something we read at the dais. So whatever the board feels differently, if you want to make a wording of the board will not allow behavior, again, it's what we said already through the retreat as a board. And even though the chair may be the one to stop a behavior, the policy is stating that as a board, we will not tolerate that, because it is our meeting, not just one person. So that's why we left it the way it was. But I didn't change anything from what we had all agreed upon originally.
Yeah, and we are in a policy workshop now, so it doesn't mean that these words or edits in the future, not only your policy, but other policy language cannot be changed. And again, I just leave it open to board reflection and comment.
Your mic. Excuse.
It is. You don't hear me? Yeah, I think so. But anyway, yeah, just to repeat, this is a policy workshop, and this is the time and the time for the conduits and verbiage and considerations of the remarks. So we can absolutely, as a board, change. If not, obviously, we keep the same. So that concludes my remarks. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Member Gray. Member Vaughn?
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. So I have mixed feelings about this policy, because I do appreciate that if it's in policy, it's very clear and transparent, and people who are coming to speak will understand, because I think there's a lot of confusion if we're changing it kind of as is, if people prepare a certain speech and then they get here and realize that things have to change, and then they don't know if they have to cut it down to a minute and a half or a minute, and that causes a lot of frustration, I think, for people who want to come and give public comment. I do think that it limits the chair's ability to kind of have autonomy over this and set this, and I'm not sure if that's where we want to go as a board, that's fine, but it does, we've, as far as I know, since I've been here, it's always been decided through our way of work, which is something that we change without having to have several, hearings about it and changing policies. So I do worry that if we want to make changes to this because of whatever, it becomes very laborious to do so as opposed to our way of work. But I'm open to whichever way the board wants to go. I do, however, kind of agree that I don't like the part where it says no board member will interrupt the speaker, because I just have no idea what could go on, and if something got extremely volatile, or if I felt threatened in some way, or something happened, like, I don't want to break my own policy if for some reason, I understand that that's a good habit for us, and that, we don't want to get in back and forth, and that, people who come to speak for public comment should have the right to say without being interrupted, but I don't want to like lock us into that specifically, just in case, who knows what could happen if the chair did need to interrupt, or if something happened, or I felt unsafe for some reason. We can't be naive about the time that we live in and what we're living in. I don't want to break my own policy if for some reason I interrupt a speaker knowingly or unknowingly. So that's the piece that I have an issue with. So those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Glenn, and I'm next in line, and I concur with the things. I think this is more procedural and more of the way of work that we've always done in the past. I know that the second, third year when I was chair was always 3 minutes always, and 2 minutes if it was more. But once in a while there's a hot topic, or people feel really bad about something, or there's something that's really important, and I don't want to lock myself in and be like, okay, you only get 2 minutes no matter what. It might be a huge topic that might really impact people, and if maybe like there's 2 or 3 things that night that are really impacting people, 2 or 3 things on the agenda that really impact individually, and that means that day, no matter what, if there's 2 big items that I have to go to 2 minutes. I think a way of work, it's always worked since I've been here for 5 years. I think that way of work, we're able to change, and we pretty much have stuck with 3 minutes, except for 2 minutes. And then, once again, what Member Vaughn said, like, let's say you're out and I'm out, and all of a sudden there's another person in, like, who knows? Like, I think that sometimes, like, there's been times on the board where I've had to, once in a blue moon, you may have to say something, or you have to speak out of turn. That may happen once in a while. I just remember a few months ago where I said something to Member Vaughn when she was on the board, and somebody was speaking, and it was kind of important, so it was very time sensitive, so I think that can happen. I think this is just, as much as I appreciate the thought and the idea, I think this is more procedure. I don't like it in policy. If all of a sudden we decide we want to do 4 minutes, I got to go wait till the next policy cycle and change that policy cycle. I just don't like the being locked into that time, or also the comment. That's all I have to say. Thank you. Member Perez?
So I'm looking at this, and it says, however, the board will not allow any behavior that interrupts the orderly conduct of the meeting. We've had times where the folks watching the meeting are getting kind of loud and rowdy, and I've had to hit the gavel several times to ask them to please calm down, because we can't hear the speakers. We can't, but it says the board, and it says no board member will interrupt the speaker, but I have to interrupt the speaker a minute to get the audience to calm down, and stop their time for a moment while we reset, the folks in the. So this is not going to work. The lines 157, 158, that has to be looked at. However, the board. Not so much the chair, but it says the board would not allow any behavior. But, the power is with the chair, not so much the board. It's the chair is the one who says, order in the boardroom. Yeah, we need silence. We need to be able to listen to the speakers. We need to be able to calm down. The noise level is getting too loud. Please respect our speakers. So I've never had another board member, or when there's another chair, I've never spoken out as a board member over the chair to redirect the interruptions that happen during a board meeting. We've always waited and respected any chair that's sitting there, at that time. So, so that's what I have here. But with the allotted time, we've always been very flexible when it comes from 3 minutes to 2 minutes, so I don't know if we really need this because, that's just my opinion as well.
Okay.
Okay, if I,
Member Washington hasn't spoken, and then after that, we can go from there. Member Washington?
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. I think the way the board runs smoothly. I mean, we haven't had any problems. I have not had any person to come and complain. And probably you do a great job when their time is up. You cut it off, and then the chair, whoever the chair says, thank you very much, and the next person comes up. So I don't see a need to change the procedure because it's working. If it wasn't working, then yeah, we can go back and change it, but it's running smoothly now. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Washington. Mr. Porter?
So yes, I think the reason that Ms. Rendon brought this policy forward, she articulated, there have been some court cases, and I think we've all watched what's happened over the past year or so with the state and local school boards and board meetings getting out of hand and putting the chair and board members in a lot of peril because of public behavior. So this does a couple things. It just reflects what you're already doing, and it adds a layer of protection for this board and for the chair so that you have in place and the public knows what to expect when they come into a meeting. You don't have to do it. I mean, the policy as it stands is very broad, which policies are. The thought behind this was to give certainty to the public and protection to the board so that when something does happen, and we can wordsmith it, and if you don't like board, we can change it to chair. But the point is a couple things. One, I mean, my legal advice has always been public comment is a monologue, not a dialogue. If you open it up for public comment, which you do, everyone should have a right to stand there for 3 minutes and say whatever they want as long as they don't, quote unquote, disrupt the meeting. That's a little subjective, but we've seen that happen. So the not interrupting the speaker is important because that's when the board members, you all get into trouble individually and collectively as a board. But it's also important that the board or the chair doesn't tolerate behavior that's meant to disrupt the meeting. We don't need performative behavior at a school board meeting or things that are really going to disrupt the meeting. So that language reflects not only the recent cases, but also where we are in Florida with state government and local school boards. So that's the reason for it. If the board's uncomfortable with the policy, that's completely fine. You're not going to be in trouble for not doing it. The goal was, again, to provide protection for you and certainty for the public. The other thing I would recommend, given some of the angst or queasiness about this, is we could add something to the effect that the board reserves the right by motion and vote to suspend the rules or to change the rules. In the past, 10 years ago, that's what the board would regularly do. If there was a sense that there's 100 people here, they would make a motion and it would be done by motion. And we could add that. And again, that sort of gives you the flexibility to do this. So that's sort of the an answer to that. But again, it's completely your policy. You are not compelled to do this policy, but those are the reasonings behind it and why it was brought forward.
Thank you, Mr. Porter. We'll now, Member Vaughn, Member President, and Member Gray, and then hopefully we'll wrap it soon after that.
Thank you. I was going to ask you for your opinion in general, since it was brought forward through protection, and you're our protection, right? So I love that piece about adding something where we can make a motion so there's some more flexibility, because that is what I'm worried about, is the lack of flexibility without, with it being codified in policy. Again, under your advice, do we need to leave that part about interruption?
I think it's absolutely necessary. Yeah, I think the interruption part is, and if you're uncomfortable with the rigidness of it, we can work on that. But again, this is sort of a reflection of where the state is and where local governments are vis-a-vis
Local,
the state.
but not statewide.
And my job is to protect you all, and I think you all get in trouble when you go back and forth with public comment. That's just a reality. And so this gives you some guidance and some certainty. The other thing is, and this is a much bigger conversation, legally, this board's only required to hear public comment on agenda items. That's the only legal requirement, but you all have chosen traditionally and institutionally and historically to allow any public comment. Once you open that door, you really should not be interrupting speakers because it's a slippery slope. And again, I don't get in trouble for that. You individually get in trouble and the district or the board does. So if you want to have a broader discussion about public comment, that's something that you could do. That's going to change the way of work for the entire district and the expectations that the public have come to accept. But once you allow public comment, I think you would only interrupt them if it's a disruption. And we
That's
can
what I
make
was gonna
that clearer
clarify.
if you like, but it's a disruption, not the speech.
That's what I was going to
Yeah.
clarify.
Yeah.
So from your understanding, even with the way it's written, there's enough leniency if there is a disruption?
Yes.
That any member, if
No, it's the
Josh-
chair, and we
so-
can clarify that if you
Yes.
want.
So
Yeah.
if the chair was away from the dais?
Be the vice chair, who's
Okay.
ever presiding. Yeah.
Okay, all right, thank you for the
Yeah,
clarity.
yeah, because you can't have chaos with 7 of you trying to control the running of the meeting. The chair is responsible for the meeting. Chair's not there, the vice chair, if not, whoever is in charge. And again, one of the strategies that we've used successfully in the past, and what I would recommend, if things are getting out of hand, take a recess and let security deal with it, so that you all are not putting that, and I will step in at that point. I've stepped in a few times, and it hasn't been a completely successful thing when I've stepped in, because I'm the attorney, I'm not running the meeting, but, so I think this gives more guidance and certainty, so that's sort of where we are.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Member Vaughn. Member Perez and Member Gray.
If we could impose the word chair and co-chair
Yep.
in there, that
Yep.
would be great.
Okay, it's a good change. And I'll add the language, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Member Perez. Member Gray?
Yeah, and actually, and that rationale, Mr. Porter, is what I need to hear, because I actually thought it was a word that was missed. You know, when I read it, it just looked like, well, it should be the chair. So it didn't occur to me that, so that's why I suggested memorandum, the edit. And Member Perez, Chair Perez, is all too familiar with rude folks and the need to have that, you know, mallet or whatever you want to call it. But I was interested in what was your thoughts when you say it will protect us? How does that protect us? It says, however, the board will now allow any behavior. How does that?
So the
if you have
board-
the whole chorus of the board, I don't
Yeah.
understand the
The
rationale.
board has the right to set rules for public comment, and you get into trouble when you do it sort of on a case-by-case basis.
Right.
And so if you have policy in place,
Right.
everybody knows what to expect, and you have the ability to enforce it. So putting this language in here sets the policy and sets the rules, and so that anyone coming into the board meeting knows what to expect, and everyone's treated fairly and equally. I think other boards have gotten into trouble where they single people out for interruption or for being thrown out of meetings. So this is sort of one side, everyone across the board is treated the same way, and they know what the expectations are when they come to the
No,
board meeting.
I just was referring to line 157, why, however, the board, and you mentioned it does protect when you have the word board, but,
Yeah.
you know, I think right now we're kind of beating a dead horse, because I think the board is agreeing to change to chair.
Okay.
And that settles that. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, thank you. And right before we move to the next policy, Mr. Porter, the only thing is I would like to make sure we add the extra part that says,
So this is what I propose
yeah,
now,
so,
and I
yeah.
reserve
I just
the
think-
right to
yes,
edit
yes.
this further, but I would add, the board shall reserve the right to amend the public participation process. But I'll work on that language,
Okay,
but
yeah,
we'll add that.
yeah, I think that would be great, because there are
Yeah.
situations where it could be longer or shorter. Okay, great.
Yeah.
I think we can come an agreement to that. Okay, thank you so much, Member Rendon. Okay, next one, 2460, exceptional student education.
A member Rendon also brought this policy. This is for access, this policy it's a big policy. It's being specifically amended to clarify when outside providers are allowed in our schools. The language that you see in front of you reflects the existing Florida law and also procedures that are in place, and again, clarifies for the public and parents. And then Ms. President worked on this a few years ago. This takes the policy a little bit further. We worked closely with Tracy Brown on this, and that's sort of the overall view for it, if Ms. Rendon wanted to add anything else with it. But again, all the language in here reflects either state statute or our existing procedures, and is intended to clarify for the parents and the public.
Thank you, Mr. Porter, and thank you to Tracy Brown and her staff for reviewing and looking at this. As we all know, this has been a hot topic and it's been very critical for individuals with disabilities within our schools that they get the services that they need. And at all times, we as a district try to provide those services ourselves, but there are times when we do not have the staff or the resources to be able to provide that. So just want to put some additional clarification and make sure that we as a board stand here stating that we want to make sure that everyone gets the services that they need. And this just took it a little step further that says that we understand and we recognize based upon the law that this is a responsibility of us to make sure we have an open policy to make sure that it's welcome for outside providers to be able to come in to provide the services that are necessary for the individuals according to their IEP and their disability. And so just wanted to firm it up a little bit and make sure that it gave as much possible access as individuals needed within the schools.
Member Ray?
Are you finished, Member Redmond? And I appreciate this policy very much because we've been going through HE hockey stick with this in some of the South Tampa schools. So just a few things. And when I mention to any board member that presents a policy, this is in a collaborative spirit. It's not one to be critical at all. So please take it in that light. On line 245, 246, it says private instructional personnel to provide supplemental services for their child and will cooperate to the fullest extent of the law. So why, when we have that statement there, but on page on line 276, I find it to be duplicative when it goes into where applicable, public and private instructional personnel shall undertake collaborative programming, coordination of services and plans between a public school and private instructional personnel is encouraged. So, one of the things I'm wondering, Member Rendon, if we need to have that when you already have that similar wording already in 275, 276, 277, it doesn't matter to me, really. I mean, I'm fine. The more that we impact, that's fine. But I just am wondering if we want to be repetitive. And also, one edit on line 279, principals, public instructional personnel, and private instructional personnel shall work together. I would rather have the word will work together, but shall is polite, but then if you're trying to put a policy with more teeth, the word will has better effect. And that's just here nor there. I'm just suggesting an edit. And last, my comment, and I hope that you do a response to me, on line 293, where it says, in 292, I think this is great what you have. Services provided by private instructional personnel may be provided during the student's instructional time, but may not interfere with the student's instructional time. That is so important because right now we've had tremendous, let's just say, lack of good communication, and I think that spells it out pretty succinctly. And so I think that's a great addition. Those are my comments, Madam Chair and Madam Vice Chair.
Okay. Thank you, Member Gray. Member Vaughn?
Thank you. I like this policy in the vein of when we've discussed the ABA therapist. I just want to clarify and make sure that when we talk about private providers that we're not, what? Oh, that we're not, is the intent other private providers that we haven't spoke about? Are there concerns about what that looks like? Like, I'm not sure in what other situations that would be applicable and if this policy affects that.
So I'm going to ask Ms. Brown to speak to that more specifically, but that language is already in the present policy, and it's something that the staff considers. So I think this is just to clarify if you fall into that category of a PIP what the process is. So it shouldn't affect that, but I'm not the expert on this, so.
Well, specifically, the question I have is in line 244 to 246, where it says the board recognizes that parents sometimes wish
Oh, I
to
see,
utilize
yeah.
private instructional personnel to provide supplemental services. That's
Yeah.
very broad.
Yes.
Right, it is, and
And
that's
so-
yeah,
Yeah, that's what I mentioned.
And so that's,
yeah.
okay, well, I'm not
Yeah.
sure which law, do you
Yeah,
know?
that
Which
statement
law
was
that's
provided,
referencing
yeah.
in what context, so that's why I want to get clarity.
Yeah, that statement was to sort of set the tone for what the district is willing to work with outside personnel, but there have to be rules in place to do that to protect everyone. So it's more of an introductory statement, but we can hear from staff about the
Okay.
specifics.
So right underneath that, the language that's here about who the PIPs are, the PIP is described in the state statute, which is also in the policy here.
So
it's
this
all of-
line comes from this policy specifically?
Yes. So
Or
if you look
statute, I'm sorry.
Right below there on lines 251,
Mm-hmm.
and then on to the next page, it will tell you who those PIPs are. Registered behavior tech, speech language pathologists, OTs, PTs, psychologists, and clinical social workers. So that's, any of those PIPs can be,
So that line leads to those 7 only,
yes,
Right.
and that's what
Is
the
there any way
statute
to
says,
say
that those are the 7.
limited to these
Sure.
following 7, just
Sure.
so we clarify that it's just those, so people don't read that and think, oh, I can bring in my private nanny
Sure.
or my
Yeah,
dog walker
right.
or whatever it is.
Sure.
Just to clarify that, then it goes to those 7.
Good comment.
That's all I have, thank you.
Thank you. Any, Member Washington or Chairperson? Yeah, I have a little comment as well, and I guess I'm glad you're here. Thank you, Dr. Lesperance, for all your work and everything you do. So, you know, I think this is really important. I appreciate you bringing it up. My only question or comment, when you talk about the least restrictive environment, because I want to make sure it's the right environment for every child, the only thing I'm concerned about, this takes away any input that the principal has in a way, right? Is it just going to the board? Because one of the things that I worry about sometimes is that sometimes maybe it impacts the rest of the students in the classroom. What does that look like, right? So sometimes like a principal may decide to do something or change something based on her schedule or based on the schedule of the other students or based on what environment, or maybe based on if that child should be in another least restrictive environment, what that looks like. I just wonder how this policy impacts like principals having a voice and also your
Principals
your-
have the ultimate say.
Okay.
Period.
Okay.
And this, all this does is clarify sort of the process and what we're doing now, but the principals have to run the school, and they have to sort of do that. But this gives guidance of when they can bring the PIPs in.
Okay, and I guess that's why I'm wondering why on line, if line 244 and 246 is if that line is necessarily really, because that, to me, that misleads me, that makes me feel like the school board is going to be dealing with those day-to-day operations. So that is what concerns me, is that title right there and what that looks like, because obviously I want the students to have, and I also had the same point as Member Vaughn did, is that it has to clarify, because then you could have, you know, your like you said, your nanny or anybody, or your brother who's in town could be considered there to support you. So I definitely would like those 7 really included in that policy, but I don't know about the top, because to me, it makes me feel like the board is having the final say on behavioral therapists, and it doesn't feel like the principals do.
Got it.
And
So-
I don't really like that at all.
So lines 244 through 236 seem to be causing a lot of conversation. We can look at, it doesn't do much from a legal perspective. It just sort of announces that we're going to cooperate. Well, why don't we look at that and see if it's not needed from a legal perspective. It sort of, again, is intended to state what your goal is to allow cooperation and collaboration. But if the board's uncomfortable with that, we can look at that between now and the public hearing and remove it or clarify it. It doesn't add a lot legally, so I'm not worried about if you want to take it out. The other stuff is substantive. This is more of a pronouncement, so.
Yeah, I mean, we've been talking about like making our policies shorter, whatever. So I just don't want to keep adding too many procedures when it should be policy, where some of it to me seems more procedural and less policy-driven. That's my only concern, so that's it. Anybody else?
I had just a remark.
Yes, okay, Member Gray?
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. And I did bring up line 244, 245, 246, because it really, and I want to Ms. LaSperance opinion on those two comments that I made previously. We don't really need that, as the board has made that probably pretty clear, because already it's in 270, it's inferred 274, 275, 276. But what did you think about changing the word, and perhaps this is something that you have an opinion on, Ms. LaSperance, on line 279, instructional personnel shall work together or will work together?
I mean, I don't really have a one way or another. I mean, I think shall is just a nicer way to say that we're going to be collaborating with the parents. I think that was one of the, I think some of this wording came from the parents really wanting stronger language that we will work with them, because the statute itself says that we will be collaborative. So I think this is just more emphasis on that. Yes, we will be collaborating with you and your private provider to make sure that the students have the services without interfering with the day-to-day operations of what the student needs instructionally.
So in the spirit of collaboration, then we should keep shall, because shall is collaborative, will is
Right, I agree.
not. It's more demonstrative. But I agree with the board comments on that, reducing the language on 244, 245, 246, since it's already kind of inferred in those, in 274, 275, 276, 277. But again, Member Randon, thank you for bringing this policy forward, and I appreciate the board remarks. That concludes mine. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Member Rendon?
I just want to ask Member Combs a question. So when we put the statement in the beginning, the board recognizes that parents sometimes wish to utilize private instructional personnel to provide supplemental services for their child and will cooperate to the fullest extent of the law. It was an interjection that says that we are making a commitment, because when you get down to the 274, 275, 273, that whole thing, it just talks about the collaboration between the private provider and the school. But the first one basically is saying that we are going to work with the parents. It's a different point of view, that we're going to commit to the student and the family to work collaboratively. I have no problem with adding anything to that. It was just a statement that we as a board are going to do that, and as a policy, we're going to work with our families. And that's the only reason with that. And thank you for bringing the will. I would love to say will. Member Gray, I would love to say will, but the law says shall. Because I would love to say that if we don't have a CBA for a student, then they can actually bring it in. That's just not the way the law has been worded, and that's not the way our district is setting up to do it, and I don't have a problem with that. So that's why shall was there to begin with.
Okay. Mr. Porter, do you need more feedback on that?
Nope, I'm set.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Member Rendon, and thank you, board members, and we're just trugging away today, okay?
Up at bat next is Ms. Rendon.
That's right.
With an amendment to, this is your wireless communication and other electronic devices policy, 5136. And this is a hot topic throughout the state and throughout the country, and this policy is being brought forward to stay ahead of it. We're adding under definitions to devices, smart, if you could look at line 68, smart glasses, including prescription smart glasses. This conversation happening throughout the country and throughout the state, and this clarifies and specifies that you can't have smart glasses, and they're treated just like other communication devices. So this is adding that to the definitions, and it strengthens our policy.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Porter. Member Rendon, did you want to start and say anything?
Again, the reason this just came to fruition is, one, I had a student come up and actually make fun of our policy that we didn't include it. So I thought that was quite interesting, that the students themselves are recognizing that they're using these glasses, and if anyone's ever used these glasses, they actually can give you the answers to the questions. It actually can do it AI for you and answer your test questions. So it really takes away from our educational process, and I believe it is a responsibility of this board to make sure that we make it very clear to our students that it's not going to be acceptable.
Thank you very much, Member Rendon. We'll start with Member Gray and then Chair Perez.
I appreciate this because, again, the cell phone policy to me is so critical that we limit it. Eventually, too, I'd like to, and this is not now, but line 13 and 14, I also would like it eliminated in the high school, as is the middle school and elementary, although some high schools are leaning towards that. Member Brady, no, not yet. You're not going for election. So just don't even count on that. But we talk about smart glasses and AI. Perhaps you'd like to expand just for the edification and educational value, what's going on with these kids?
So this is really just about as straightforward as it gets. It's just an expansion on really what's happened over the last few years. I shared with the board on March 4th a document which kind of, they're going to have to get a bigger document. It shows smart watches, it shows cell phones, it shows kind of the evolution of the kind of technology that's available for students. And then we have wireless headphones, and then of course we have smart glasses. So that's where we are right now. I think the only kind of questions we've had are related to prescription smart glasses, but we're given enough kind of time right now for students to make accommodations. They can take it on another day, or they can have another pair of glasses that they can use for that if they are prescription. But that's kind of the only kind of questions we've had. Then our assessment, and I'll send it after the workshop because our assessment team also created another document that we're going to share with principals tomorrow about kind of how to identify smart glasses. The glasses that Mr. Ayers had look a lot more like smart glasses, but it gives you some specifics related to. There's usually a charging portal. They're thick around the sides. There's a lot of that's the biggest question is. Well, I'm not an expert on smart glasses, so we're giving you those. But again, this goes back to, this is a student behavior as opposed to a technology consideration. It's really a student behavior. It's been going on for years in terms of how they might address that. So it's really, if you have any question, you address it. Once you take them and look at them, it'd be pretty easy to spot.
Okay, thank you. I think this should be, sorry, I think this should be a pretty brief conversation. We don't want to open it up to just start talking about technology and that, because we have quite a few things left to do today. So if we have any more comments about that, I know Chair Perez, you had a comment about that?
Well, anyway, let me just
Okay.
share my appreciation. Thank you, Mr. Brady, for those comments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Chair Perez?
Thank you, Member Rendon, for bringing this forward. I do have a question, because I went on to a school maybe about a year and a half ago, and I had a principal who had smart glasses.
Oh, they had the charging glass?
So what I know that we have this for the students. What are we doing for staff?
I mean, there would be no, Mr. Brady, there's no reason an adult on a campus would not be able to use smart glasses. This is more around what Mr. Brady's speaking is testing when they're sitting for their assessments, their fast testing. We're very restrictive around what students can utilize. But as far as adults go, Mr. Brady can keep his smart glasses for now.
Oh.
But yeah, so there's nothing with our
It's
adults on
AI
campus. This
glasses.
is more in regards to students and how they utilize that during the school day, and would deter from learning. Yes, ma'am. Great question.
I
Great.
did want to add, it's mandated by the state that we communicate this to all families, so that's something we do every year, so that'll happen again on this. It's just an addition to it.
Okay, thank you, and I think we have enough direction for that policy. Thank you, guys. Thank you, everyone, for your comments.
Okay. The final policy brought by a board member is brought by Member Combs. This is existing policy 7320 about the acquisition, removal, disposal, sale, or exchange of property. And this is intended, and I'll let Ms. Combs speak to it, to really create more transparency in the purchase and sale of land for the district, and it adds language. Mr. Farkas is not here, but Ms. Combs and I work closely with him, and he's comfortable with this language. And so Ms. Combs can explain her reasoning for it, and we can go from there.
Yeah, a couple things. First thing is, I do have one slight change that I wanted to add on line 26, where it says exchanges of district property, district-owned property shall be permitted under any circumstances without board approval.
Okay.
So I was going to add that one last thing. And basically, this is just to protect the district. I mean, one of the things we have, just so much land, so much valuable land I mean, and I think it's really important that we focus on, and I know we've always been transparent, the process has always been transparent, but I want to make sure it's just another layer of protecting this district and make sure that there's transparency and that nothing occurs without us knowing when we're talking about the property. You know, our property is valued at billions and billions of dollars, so we want to make sure that, you know, that we're always keeping in mind the district and, of course, the taxpayer, and just having a little bit more transparency on this. But I did talk to, you know, I thought about this for a long time, and Mr. Porter and Mr. Farkas and I, we worked on this. It was supposed to come last policy cycle, so it's taken us a while to work on this, but that's just the one addition that I have. Thank you. Okay, just go down the line. Okay, we'll start, how about with Board Member Vaughn?
Mine is quick. I just wanted to, that was the line that I had questions about, that it said it wasn't permitted under any circumstance, but you're saying right now
Yes.
that you want to amend that just to say without board approval.
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
that's the only question I had.
See, I read your mind before you came.
Thank you.
Okay, Member Gray?
No, I think there's a great need because the amount of competition is going to be horrendous for property. And I think the more transparent we have this and visible to all partakers, everyone involved, the more protection our board will have in sharing this with the public. So I think this is very timely. I thank you, Member Nadia Combs, for bringing this forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Gray. Member Rendon?
A quick question on line, I guess it's 30 into 31. It says this policy does not include the district's purchase of any real property. Don't we already approve any purchase of the properties?
I think it depends on the.
Why would we not as a board, I mean,
Yeah.
I feel
Mr.
like that needs to be that we would have board approval. If we were going to spend $70
So-
million on a piece of property, I think the board should approve that.
Right, Mr. Farkas asked that line be included, and we can get further clarification on it. That, he felt that was important, and, yeah.
I would like clarification
Okay.
on why, only because right now it's a blank check. That
Got
the
it.
district has a blank check to buy whatever property they want. And in the fact that we are responsible for the budget,
Got it.
I feel that's something that we should be.
Okay, we'll get clarification. Again, Mr. Farkas, when we worked through that, asked that line be included, and he can provide further comments on that.
And I think one of the things that we talked about is sometimes it's so time sensitive and it takes so long for things to get to us. If there's something that's in front of us, we still have to approve it in the end, so we're not going to not approve it, but I think that was some of the thought process.
And I agree with you. I think there's
Yeah.
probably, like, if you're in a
Yes.
real estate deal,
Yeah,
you got to
yes.
get moving on it, but you still have 30 days within a contract before
Yes.
that contract is purchased.
Sure.
Having it with here that it can be purchased without, like, I think you can go under contract. I think that time sensitiveness is go under contract.
Okay.
But the purchase, I think there's.
Yeah,
a
I think
difference.
we can discuss that, and
Clarification.
I'm flexible with that. I mean, the main thing is I just wanted to protect the district with the board.
Right.
You know, I just want to make sure that we, especially,
It's-
you know, when we're going out asking people to renew the tax referendum, I want them to know that we're looking at
Right.
every contract, everything, and that we're being very
And that's not a
transparent.
legal issue, it's more of an operational issue. That's why we need Mr. Farkas's input, but we'll provide that before the public hearing.
Okay, great, thank you. Chair Perez, okay, great, we're just, great job, guys.
Thank you.
Okay, so, we have wellness, and then I have a comment from Member Vaughn, too.
So at this point, Ms. Davis will take over. This is a staff-driven policy update, so.
Good morning, thank you. So now we're going to take up 8510 Wellness. You remember this policy from the last cycle. We heard your comments, we took your feedback. Shaney led the team, even with Mr. Porter, and reviewed the entire policy and then had one-on-ones with each of you. So I'm going to let Shaney kick it off.
Thank you so much. Good morning, board members. As Ms. Davis stated, so we have proposed this to you at the last board workshop, and you had a lot of good feedback for us. So went back, made sure that the board policy proposal is now appropriately cited with the appropriate citations of state and federal law. And we made some additional changes. If you have read the policy in front of you now, we did add some more to it because we wanted to make sure that everything was appropriately cited. And also, the Hillsborough Healthy School Committee looked at it and felt that we needed to further clarify specifically the nutrition standards, since those are very specific, as I'm sure you've noticed. And for a principal to ensure that those things are followed, we felt like that information had to be spelled out pretty clearly. Okay.
Okay, thank you, board members, and we'll go ahead and we'll start with Member Gray.
I want to thank Ms. Hall and Ms. Davis and Dr. Ross for all of the time that you spent with each board member. I just remember, and this is not a very exciting story, but in 2009, let's see, Van Ayers, when we got started with this Hillsborough Healthy Schools Committee, we went through the Department of Education, and we had the standard from them. But now it's morphed through the years as you have matched. All these are separate statutes now. And long and behold, now we have the actual legal obligations to really commit ourselves to following the law, which is interesting because, as Dr. Ross, she's not talking right now, but so many of our principals had no idea that this is actually law. And then, Shani, in your hard work ethic, the way that you handle everything else in detail, you wrote down step by step so principals can see this is what we have to do. Now, not the most exciting topic or language, because it's generally, if I'm not mistaken, is it 99% Florida statute?
It's both federal regulations and
I'm
Florida statute,
sorry.
yeah.
Florida and federal.
Right.
So we're talking, this is the law. Is that the great
Right.
summation of that? So that's my, only my remarks. It just looks like a lot of work and time went into this. And I thank board members for spending time with your one-on-ones. So, thank you.
Thank you, Member Gray. Member Vaughn?
I don't really have many comments because we had a lengthy meeting, which I appreciate. I'm going to go ahead and just roll my comment that I had for the end in real quickly. I think that it's really important that we are sending all of the policies that we change, whether it affects them or not, to all of our employees after they've been approved. I continually see disconnects where we pass policy and whether we've sent it out to the principals, it's not making its way to the employees, and that's not fair to them. It puts them in a position. If we can get magnet choice window open through text message and every single thing else, the very least thing that we can do is every time we pass policies 4 times a year is make sure every single employee is sent those policies so they know what changed, what their rights are, and what our policy changes. And the fact that we've gotten this far and haven't done it is surprising to me. The only other thing I'd like to say is I really appreciate the review on this. This was so helpful in getting to this point. Going forward, even if there's board member policies, if I can have a little review on that, because I didn't get that this time. And I think maybe it's just unclear that for a review for a workshop, it's really just staff-driven policies where they can answer questions, because we have time here for board members to answer it. But I would also like, going forward, a little review about all of the policies, just so I have that time and space to kind of think about them beforehand on the calendar. So those are my only 2 thoughts. Sorry to lump it into this, but now I saved that on the back end. So those are my only comments. Thank you.
Okay, and there's pressure not to forget, so that's good. Okay, Member Rendon?
Thank you, and I'm going to kind of piggyback on with Dr. Vaughn. I mean, sorry.
You can go back to school.
Member Vaughn. I agree. I would appreciate, I think it's appropriate for us to, even board member policies, to make sure that we get a call from Mr. Porter. If you let us know, maybe just, hey, are you good with these moving forward, maybe the week before, after, week after we get the book. And then we appreciate when staff does that as well. And then if we could get, human resources on target with annually, where we have to send out our policies and they have to check the box that they've reviewed them. I think that's important. Many companies do that around the world. That says, these are our policies and procedures for 2026, and the staff go in and they just click the box. And it's not, listen, they need to know for their own safety. We need to make sure that they're being informed. I think that's part of transparency, and it happens everywhere. And you usually give them, 60 days after the beginning of the year to review whatever there's in place. And I think it's important for them and for us and for our students to do that for sure. And then I, again, would like a link, and I think Member Vaughn has asked this multiple times, on the front of our website, that there's a direct link to our policies. I went to a Florida School Board Association meeting with the entire, Central Florida. And that was one of the things that we did. Could you look for the policy in your district? And so they were looking for our policies in our districts regarding certain topics. And other board members from around the state could not find some of our topics. So I think it's important that that goes on the front page of our website so that we are transparent on what our policies are and there's a direct link. That's not hard to do. They shouldn't have to think that they have to go to school board and then to policy. Like, just make a link to our policies. It's not that hard. So I know you've asked for that on multiple occasions, and I think other board members have too, but I specifically remember Member Bond doing that. But it was a tall telling sign when we were meeting in Wauchula that other board members from other districts could not find our policies regarding certain topics. Granted, couldn't find them in theirs either, so we're not alone. But again, if an adult educated in school boards can't find a policy,
Who else?
there's a problem.
Yeah. And I
Thank
appreciate
you.
that feedback, and I'll have staff get together on both of these around communication, come up with a plan on communication of policies, and Ms. Davis, you can communicate that with board members, get your feedback on how we're going to push that out. But we do also yearly have annual training requirements that all of our employees do. I love that feedback around having our new policies be a part of that as an added layer. So we'll have staff get together, come up with their ideas, communicate with all the board members in the next week or so of how we're going to do that, get feedback, and have a detailed plan, because you have asked for that, and we'll make sure that happens pretty quickly.
Okay, thank you, board members. Member Washington?
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. I just want to thank you for all your hard work, because I know this is a great deal of hard work trying to put this together. And also, Ms. Russ, thank you so much for your cooperation. It's all about simplicity. It's all about what they were saying, being able to find something when you need it. I'm old, so I go back to the days when you remember, Jim, we had this book about this high with policies and procedures in it, and you couldn't find it. It was hard, you couldn't find it. You go through the book, something happened, you have to look through the book. Now, if we got it somewhere simple, where we could look it up and give the right answers and give the procedures to people, and people not going to read all this now. I mean, they're not. I mean, human nature, they're not going to read it. So we want to make it simple. When something happens, they could just pull it up and be able to elaborate on it. So thank you. I appreciate that, to make it more simple. It's really good. Okay, thank you, Madam Vice Chair.
Thank you. And just one last thing. Thank you, Member Gray. I know you initially brought this forth, this Healthy Schools. I know they work very closely. Thank you, Shani Hall, for bringing this. I think these are really important. I appreciate you also really spelling out what a healthy snack is and what is not a healthy snack, because I think that sometimes people confuse things that seem healthy, but they're not healthy. And I think that, seriously, people think something's really healthy and it's not. Like, you grab like some drink and you're like, that's really healthy, but it's full of sugar. So I think that's really important. I think just all the work that you do in making sure, because we want our students to be, physically healthy, academically healthy, emotionally healthy, and food is such an important part, and it's such a food insecurity. I want to say thank you for bringing this policy and all the work that you do to make sure that our students are fed, taken care of, and they're motivated. I mean, our cafeteria workers in the back, our nutritionists are some of the most hardest working people in the district. I know every time I visit a school with Mr. Ayers, that's one of the first places he goes to. So, just to the back, the lunchroom, that's the heart of the district. That's where kids get to relax now more than ever. In middle school, there's so much work. It's the time in their lives that they really enjoy, and I think it's really important, and thank you for your leadership. Member Gray?
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. I wanted to say, in addressing Member Vaughn's question or concern and Member Washington's concern, one of the things, Ms. Hall, that we should bring out, because of the fidelity, do principals follow this, right? How do we check to see all of this is being followed? Well, we have now by Florida statute, we must have a committee, a healthy school committee in each school. Would you like to elaborate? Because I think that will help those, concerns about who is following this and that kind of mystery.
Yes, thank you for the opportunity. So yes, as noted in the policy and also under Florida Administrative Code, each school site has to have a healthy school team, and that team is responsible for making sure that the wellness policy is being followed. So that is something that the Hillsborough Healthy School Committee is taking on as the goal, is to work with schools to bridge the gap between the district, which has the law and has the policy, and the Healthy School team, their formulation and given the information they need to have in order to make sure that they are compliant. We know we have an opportunity here, so that's something that we are going to work toward this next year. Once this policy goes through, hopefully it will, that we can then give the information to the teams that need it and help principals formulate those teams if they don't have them in place.
And board members, if you look at line 64, this is what Ms. Hall just said, the Healthy Schools team. Number 2, be responsible. The Healthy Schools team shall be responsible for ensuring that the school follows the district wellness policy and reports compliance to the Wellness Review Committee biannually. So, good point, and it's in there, and that's we need to make sure it's complied with. So.
Yeah, I wanted to also, thank you, Mr. Porter, thank Ms. Capucci also, because I failed to mention she was working very, very hard along with Ms. Pepe. Just a big collaborative effort, so thank you. Thank you, Madam Vice Chair.
Okay, thank you, Member Gray. I think we have one last comment from Member Vaughn.
I do. I have one last comment. Thank you so much. So I agree that we should have some kind of format where we have something that says our employees have looked at our policies. But let's be honest, they're lengthy. There's many, many, many of them. So my focus, I just want to make clear, and I know you said you'll get feedback on this, but on the record, with all the members here, I just want to say, I think it's really important that they are specifically getting the ones that have changed.
And that's what I meant. I'm sorry.
Because one that's chunked down and easier to process, it's more recent, and so I don't want that to get convoluted in like this, okay, now I've checked the box at the beginning of the year and now I'm responsible for knowing all the policies. I think the ones that are changed are really important, so I just want to make sure that was clear.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you, everyone. And with that noise, that means that we're kind of done, and we're about to step up to the second part. Chair Perez?
Well, if I could just interject for a second. So you're way ahead of schedule. It's 11 o'clock. You have lunch being delivered between 11:30 and 12. I think you have a couple of choices. I don't know if the team is ready to go. You could start and take a break, or you could take a break now and reconvene at a certain time.
I just have one question. Is Member Hahn coming for this? Would she be coming earlier for this, or are we waiting for, because she's planning on being here as a scheduled time?
I don't know the answer to that.
Okay.
So.
I would like a little break.
Okay.
At the very least. A little break, and whichever.
Whatever you want, whatever, Chair Perez, whatever.
Break.